course, is YouTube Live, and it happens to be April the 18th, 2026. I have a wonderful story to tell you today and to relate to you how that it can maybe apply to your life today. So, Father, over the next few moments, thank you for your wonderful word. And thank you for this story of someone who faced devastation and also, as well, betrayal and yet rose above. Well, it starts, of course, in a small town in the southern part of the States. There was a fellow whose name was Sam Walton. And Sam Walton was running a fairly successful variety store in a particular southern community. And he had been running it for 5 years, and people were driving from all over to, get his special type of service. And he had, a modest thing happening. And he had been renting from this fellow whose name was P.K. Holmes. And for 5 years, this variety store had been very successful. Many people were traveling to it. And but one day, Sam got a phone call, and the phone call says, well, Mr. Walton, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to renew your lease. He says, what do you mean, not renew my lease? He says, my son wants to get into business. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rent it to him. You have 90 days to, of course, move on and take your store someplace else. Well, Sam put down the phone. He was absolutely devastated. He talked to his wife and he said, what are we going to do? And his wife says, well, we don't have any choice. We don't, we're losing our lease. So what we need to do is we need to find a new location. So they made a business decision which was going to affect them and also the retail market of the entire United States and the world at the time. So Sam and his wife began to look around to see where they could actually buy a building. They made a decision that they were not going to be any longer subject to, of course, the business decision of someone else. They were not going to rent. Well, they began to look around, and they also noticed something about the retail market. Sears, J.C. Penney, Macy's, Gimbels, they were all locating in, of course, larger cities over 50,000. But there wasn't a retail department store in small communities. And so they made a decision. They started looking around, and finally they found a small retail space, actually a fairly large retail space in a small community, about 3,000 people. So they bought the building, and they took the model that they had used so successfully in that other location and began to put it all together in, of course, that location. It was amazing that, Sam had to work even harder than he had worked before. But he also said, what I need to do is, he says, I got to make sure my employees are taken care of. He says, I got to make sure that we have volume and we have to have good prices. And so over the next couple of years, he developed the model that would become, of course, the very center stone of what was going to happen. And he also was very ambitious. He said, you know what? I have noticed that there is one area of United States and the world where people don't put department stores, and that is communities under 10,000 people. So he said, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to put a retail store in smaller communities. And it worked. It really did work. And he said, we're going to change the name of our stores from Walton's Five and Dime to Walmart. That's right, Walmart. Sam Walton is the founder of Walmart. And he began within a very short period of time planting stores in small communities. In fact, we had, when I was living in Slave Lake, a little community of 7,000 people, a Walmart store was placed in Slave Lake, and it became the centerpiece of retail in that community. Now, of course, we all know Walmart is a very big, retail chain. In fact, it is the world's largest retail chain. When Sam died in 1992, he had 10,000 stores. That's right. He decided, I'm going to expand my empire. And over time, he and his empire of Walmart, of course, featuring in small towns, became the world's largest retailer. In fact, Walmart became so popular that many of the major market retailers have gone out of business, and yet Walmart is expanding and growing all the time. Why? Because of the drive and also the philosophy of Sam Walton and the Walton family. The family is now worth over $200 billion. And they have, of course, thousands of stores that put an annual revenue of almost $1 trillion. That's right. And so it all started with a devastating decision. So what am I saying to you today over that particular story? Well, every one of us from time to time finds ourselves being betrayed by someone else. Sam Walton have, of course, had his landlord said to him, I want this for my son. Now, what happened to his boy? Well, his boy didn't have the same business sense or the same drive or the same ambition, of course, that Sam Walton had. And within a very short period of time, that particular business ended up failing. And the landlord, whose name was P.K. Holmes, lost literally millions of dollars, even billions of dollars, if he would have kept Sam there where he was. But Sam was bigger than any particular situation. Let me tell you something. Attitude, ambition, and also as well, of course, drive will take you even when a bad situation turns around. What Sam and his wife decided to do was they would never again be subject to, of course, the whims of another. They decided to take control of their lives. And this is a very important lesson for you and I today. When bad things happen to us, we can sit there and, basically sit in the mud like little kids do and say, oh, it's terrible. Or we can pull ourselves up by our bootstrings and say, this particular thing is not going to defeat me. I remember the story, of course, of, Colonel Saunders. Colonel Saunders had failed in business for a number of years. But there was one thing that he was good at, and that was, of course, doing chicken. So he took his first Social Security check and invested it in, of course, a business. Many people said, you're not going to make it. But there was one thing that, of course, Colonel Sanders understood. He understood how to make chicken, and he understood marketing. And now, of course, there is Kentucky Fried Chicken everywhere. What could have turned into a bad situation turned into a good situation because of attitude, because of persistence, and because of resourcefulness. You can allow whatever it is to defeat you, or you can rise above it. Sam and his wife, they took a bad situation and they turned it around and created a retail empire. You and I know how powerful Walmart is in the retail landscape. There is no store or chain that has done as well as Walmart. Like I said, it could have defeated him. It could have kept him, you know, but he rose above. The story of Sam Walton, the story of Colonel Saunders, the story of so many other people who life had given them lemons and they turned it into lemonade. I don't know who has betrayed you. I don't know what circumstances have knocked you down. But there's a wonderful Japanese proverb that goes like this: if you get down, knocked down 7 times, you get up 8. And that is so powerful. The leader of the Chinese Communist power, Xi Jinping, um, started off as his dad was a communist official that, of course, incurred the wrath of some local communist other officials and ended up being ousted from the Communist Party. Instead, of course, of becoming angry, he said, I am going to reshape the Communist Party and ultimately, of course, China. Over time, he rose to the #1 position in China. And he said, we are going to revolutionize this country. And they have. China today has the second largest economy in the world. And this particular leader is known for his ability to be able to negotiate and his ability to be able to revolutionize people around him. He has turned China from a third world country into a world leader in technology and also in industry. In fact, our own leader of Canada, his name is Mark Carney, recently in the month of January went into China to secure a trade deal. You see, what had happened was simply this: Canada had been a good trading partner of the United States. In fact, we are United States' best trading partner. At least we were until Donald Trump came. Then Donald Trump decided that he was going to turn Canada into the 51st state. And that was not a good idea because Canadians are not Americans. We have our own identity and our own sovereignty. And so basically, Mark Carney was elected on an anti-Trump kind of ticket, and he has become Canada's prime minister. Now, Canada is going into negotiations right now with the United States for a trade deal. We used to have a trade deal called NAFTA, and then it was changed to CUSMA, which is, of course, the Canadian, United States, Mexico trade agreement. And it had worked for 5 years, but Donald Trump, for whatever reason, has decided that he's going to impose tariffs on Canada, destroying a trade relationship that has been going on for 100 years. Now, of course, that has forced Canada to go to other places to find other trade deals. And one of those trade deals was with China. And because Donald Trump is going around the world destroying trade relationships with all these other countries, well, all the other countries are going to China, which is not a good situation anyway, but they're looking for a stable trade partner. Now, what's going to happen to the United States is after Donald Trump basically moves from the scene, United States is going to have to rebuild all these trade alliances and trade situations. Unfortunately, many of those world leaders and countries have moved on. And that's unfortunate because United States, up to Donald Trump, was a secure and also reliable trade partner. They're not right now. And it's all because of one man. But you see, what we need to do is when we are betrayed, when we are, put down by somebody. We can sit there and, say to ourselves, well, I guess I have to do deals with the devil. Or you can say to yourself, no, I am not going to play your game anymore, and I'm going to find someone else. But also, as well, I am going to rise above the situation. This is not going to define who I am. When Sam Walton found out that he had 90 days to vacate his rental space, he made a decision that was going to change the retail market forever. He said, you know what? We are going to strategically place ourselves in communities under 10,000 people, and we're going to own our own buildings. So wherever you go, the Walmart is owned, the property that is it sits on is owned and distributed and taken care of by the Walmart Corporation. And they also have another policy, and that is that if you're looking for a place to stay for the night, you can stay in, of course, if you're a nomad or you are an RV person, you can stay in their parking lot for free. That is something that they have done, which no other retail store has done. You see, Walmart, whether you like it or not, is built on customer service and built on, of course, low prices. And that's why people keep going back to Walmart. And that's why Walmart continues to expand because of Sam Walton's philosophy. Sam Walton's philosophy was, I get knocked down 7 times, but I get up 8. You can allow your circumstances to define you, or you can define your circumstances. You can let life defeat you, or you can defeat life. It totally depends on your attitude. I had a friend whose name was Tyson Spence. Tyson was a successful businessman, but he was also a successful person. When I came to the city of St. Albert. St. Albert was my last church, and Tyson was on my leadership team. Tyson was a well known person in that community. Tyson was on the board of the local food bank. He was in charge of the neighborhood watch. He was in charge of several organizations, and everyone spoke so highly of Tyson. And I considered him a wonderful mentor and role model for me. And Tyson would often say this: attitude is everything. Tyson had been knocked down several times in his life. And yet, being a good Saskatchewan farm boy, he just simply picked himself up and said, these things that have happened to me are not going to define who I am. I had the privilege of doing Tyson's funeral. And many people afterwards, after the funeral, said to me, Tyson was a very special man. And you know what? That's what you and I can become. We can become influential. We can become role models. We can become encouragers. We can become people who make a difference in other people's lives. You see, people are watching us right now, and they see how life can be very difficult and sometimes cruel. But you and I can define how we're going to react and how proactive we're going to be. You see, Sam Walton learned a very valuable lesson, and that was that he was not going to any longer be subject to someone else's whim. He had 90 days to get out of his retail space. And he said, that's never going to happen to me or to any of my stores again. And so he went with the philosophy of buying his own property, building his own store, and replicating what he had done in his smaller stores. He also said, we're going to focus on the smaller communities, the communities under 10,000 people, and we're going to offer them quality service and low prices. And guess what? It has worked to the point where there are 10,000 plus Walmart stores around the world. And you can go to so many small communities and there's a Walmart store. Now, you may not like Walmart or you might like Walmart, but Sam's story is a story of how, you get knocked down, but you get back up again. The 1998 FIFA World Champions had this as their theme song. I get knocked down, but I get back up again. And I remember my son when the FIFA World, Cup was on, the soccer. He would walk around, I get knocked down, I get back up again. Well, that has been the theme of his life and the theme of all my children's life. Yes, they get knocked down, but they get back up again. Where did they learn that? They learned it from us. They learned it from, when we got knocked down, we got back up again. Why? Because we weren't going to allow the situation to define who we are. My simple exhortation for you today is simply don't allow the circumstances to define who you are. Inside of you, believe it or not, is a winner. I close with this thought, and it's simply this. If you're going to be a victor, you have to have something to get victory over. If you're going to be an overcomer, then you have to have something to overcome. And if you're going to be a conqueror, you have to have something to conquer. And if you're going to be undefeated, you have to have something that is trying to defeat you. It is your moment. So, Father, I thank you today for these thoughts and the story of Sam Walton. Sam was a guy who was facing a very difficult situation back in 1950. P.K. Holmes had said to him, you have 90 days to get out. And as it turned out, it was the best thing that ever happened to Sam Walton because he learned a lot of very valuable lessons. He learned that you can't allow someone else to control your destiny. You have to control it yourself. He also learned that if you're going to succeed in life, it's not going to be easy. Sam worked hard to, of course, get to where he was. And when he died, of course, in 1992, he had built an empire that stretched around the world and is still stretching around the world. The philosophy that he had, which he passed on to his family and passed on to his employees and also to his business model, has literally shaped and changed the whole retail market. We know that Sears is no longer the number one marketer in the world. We know that J.C. Penney and, other stores have failed, but Walmart continues to grow. Why? Because of the simple philosophy that Sam has installed, not only in the philosophy of Walmart, but also as well in the retail market. You don't give up and you find out where your niche is, and that's where you succeed. And so today, Lord, I pray that we will not be victims anymore, but we'll be victors. We'll not be overcome anymore, but we shall be overcomers. And we also, Lord, will be undefeated. That's my prayer. Help us to understand that it takes optimism, it takes attitude, it takes perseverance, and it takes hard work. But when we do those, we will succeed. So I thank you for the story of Sam Walton and the story of how that we are not defined by the circumstances that we find ourselves. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I hope that this story of Sam Walton and Walmart and, what Sam did, and also the story I said about, Colonel Saunders of KFC, these men made a business decision. They knew that there were a certain area that they could succeed. They never went outside of that area. Yes, there are Walmarts in major cities everywhere, but their niche is, of course, still small town Canada, small town America, and small town wherever it is that they are. That is where their success has really been. So thank you for listening to me today and this story. And please remember, bad things happen to good people, but bad things do not have to define who we are. We can rise above our trials, our tribulations, and our situation by making a decision, by saying, this situation is not who I am, and it's not going to define who I become. My name is Robert Dean Steele. Thank you for spending time with me. Have yourself a great and godly day.